What's up, everybody? I'm Coach Tyler with Fencer's Edge, and today we are going to be going over the Flèche attack. And today we're going to be focusing on epee specifically. You can use this move in foil, however, it is much more frequently used in epee. And absolutely do not use this move in saber because you will get carded for crossing the feet. So this is not a move that you can use in saber. We're going to be focusing on epee today. So the Flèche attack is a very powerful and fast attack to get to your opponent as soon as possible from a wider distance than you would be able to score from, let's say, a lunge distance. So it covers a lot of distance very quickly. So today we're going to be covering a lot of different aspects of the Flèche attack. We're going to be, first of all, breaking down the mechanics of how to actually perform the move. Then I'll be giving you some tips on how you can judge the correct distance and how you can protect yourself with the Flèche. All right, so let's break down the body mechanics of the Flèche attack. So just like a lot of moves in fencing, it all starts from having a really solid unguard position with this nice deep knee bend. This is where all of your power, speed, and balance comes from. If you're trying to perform this Flèche attack with straight legs, it's not going to be as explosive, you're not going to be as balanced, and it's not going to be as fast. So number one aspect is definitely having this deep knee bend. All right? So the first thing that happens with the Flèche attack is that the arm extends. This is really, really crucial and important for epee fencing. In foil, it's not so important, but in epee, it is absolutely crucial that the first thing that happens when you start the Flèche attack is that your arm fully extends. Okay? If you are starting the Flèche attack and you're pulling your arm or you're not leading with your arm, it makes it much easier for your opponent to counterattack you and you will be out of that touch. The next aspect to the Flèche attack is that this front shoulder drops and moves towards the target area, okay? And the backhand reaches back, so you're really extending your reach as much as possible. The next stage of the Flèche is pushing off of this back leg and stepping in front. So bringing that back leg from behind you to in front of you. So you're landing in this position for the Flèche. Now from here, the last stage of the Flèche is to push and drive again off of that back foot. All right, so let's break it down step by step one more time in slow motion. Arm leads. Shoulder leans, backhand reaches, and then I'm pushing off of the back foot, bringing it in front and landing here, making sure that I'm turning my shoulders as much as possible, giving myself the most reach, and making my target area as skinny as possible. So when I land here, I should be turned here with my shoulders like this. Now the last stage of the Flèche is pushing off of your left leg if you're right-handed, your right leg if you're left-handed. That last stage is going to be pushing off of that foot and driving past and through your opponent. Not running into them, but driving past them with that final action. All right, so a few of the common beginner mistakes that I see in the Flèche attack are, number one, not having the bent knees to begin with. We talked about that earlier, so that's the most crucial part. The next common mistake that I see a lot of beginners make is that when they Flèche, they keep their shoulders squared off to their opponent, all right? This is gonna do a couple of things that will hinder their effectiveness. Number one is if I am reaching and my shoulders are squared, I'm not going to get the same distance that I would get if my shoulders were turned. So number one, that gives them the most possible reach. And number two, if my shoulders are squared off to my opponent, I'm giving my opponent a lot of target area to hit. Whereas if I turn this shoulder, now my target area becomes a lot skinnier and a lot harder to hit, okay? So that's one of the common mistakes I see is people Flèching with the squared off shoulders. Another common mistake that I see is that when people go for the Flèche attack is they stand up here and push up with the Flèche attack. So they're kind of traveling up in the air more than they are going forward. Now this move is designed to be an explosive attack that covers a lot of distance quickly. So it's meant to really drive you forward more than it is up. So when you're doing this Flèche attack, it's important to stay bent on this front knee as you're pushing through, okay? So when my leg fully extends here for the Flèche, I'm extending and driving forward, and I'm not extending this leg early and driving up with the Flèche. So another common mistake that I see with people making the Flèche attack is that they may extend their arm, but they don't do the upper body lean, okay? So this upper body lean is going to help you in a few different ways. Number one, it's going to move you closer to your opponent faster. That's probably the most important part. The second important part to this body lean with the Flèche is that it allows you to move your center of gravity forward, and it gives you this forward momentum that really drives and pushes you forward with that Flèche attack. So the last common mistake that I want to talk about today is the distance at which people choose to make the Flèche attack. So we're going to get our gear on here, and I will talk about the proper distance to perform a Flèche attack. Okay, so let's talk about the proper distance to make a Flèche attack. So, en garde. So, for the Flèche attack, number one, you want to target your opponent's forearm to shoulder area. So this area right in here is where you want to focus your target for the Flèche attack. So, when I make my Flèche attack, if I'm at the proper distance, I should be hitting my opponent's target before or right with my back foot hitting the ground on this step forward, okay? So if I Flèche from outside here and I land and I still haven't touched my target area, I'm too far away and it's going to be really easy for my opponent to parry or to make a counterattack. It's going to be much easier for him to defend himself if I'm Flèching from outside that distance. So the main thing that you want to focus on is finding your Flèche distance. So when you land your Flèche, you should be hitting your opponent either just before this foot hits the ground or right with it. All right, so one of the things that you can do to help you kind of learn your Flèche distance is to get with a partner and start off in this position of the Flèche attack. So you should be right here, and then have your opponent move into where you're touching their arm, okay? So once they've moved into that distance where you're making that contact, then from here you're going to step back to the unguarded position, and now you'll see this is the distance that I need to make my Flèche attack from, okay? If I'm any wider than this, then I shouldn't go, because when I go, I'm going to fall short there, okay? So that is one way that you can help learn your Flèche attack distance. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is Flèching with opposition. So one of the defensive tactics to stop somebody from Flèching you is to make a counterattack. So Flèching with opposition is a way that you can protect yourself from that counterattack and still make the touch. So when I make my Flèche attack, if my opponent is counterattacking inside my arm, okay, one of the things that I can do to protect myself from that is to Flèche with opposition. So when I Flèche to protect myself from being counterattacked inside the arm, I'm going to move my wrist over and take opposition 4 with my Flèche. So now I'm protecting the inside of my body and scoring the touch, okay? So just so you can get an angle of that, when I Flèche, I'm coming over to this angle and protecting that inside of my arm, inside of my chest area with the Flèche attack, okay? So now if my opponent likes to counterattack outside or on top of my arm, outside the blade or on top of my arm when I make my Flèche attack. Okay? As you see here, I would Flèche with 6 opposition. So now my wrist is going to come up, and I'm going to drop my point into the target area. Okay? So this action is in particularly really good for lefties, because lefties like to counterattack outside the arm like that. So just so you can get the angle of it, the 6 opposition with the Flèche is here, lifting the wrist and dropping the point. Okay? And the 4 opposition is here, so moving the wrist over and scoring with the point. So another option that you can do with the Flèche attack is to Flèche with a disengage. Okay? So a few really crucial aspects here. So let's say my opponent likes to take a circle 6 parry when I make my Flèche attack. So when I go into Flèche and he takes 6, I'm going to keep that disengage very, very small. So the disengage should just be with the fingers controlling the action, very small like this. Okay? If you're making your disengage with your whole arm, it's going to be way too big and you're going to be a lot less accurate. So it's important that when you make this Flèche with the disengage, you're letting your fingers and your wrist do very small disengages instead of big disengages with the whole arm. All right, so if your opponent likes to make a circle 6 parry and you go for this disengage, their point's going to be inside, right? So even if they don't find the parry, they can extend and still hit. Okay? So what I like to do with this circle 6 is, with this circle 6 disengage, is when I make my Flèche and he circles, moving my hand over to that 4 opposition. So that even if he doesn't find the parry and he extends his arm, I'm going to lock him out. All right, so let's say my opponent likes to make a parry 4 when I go for my Flèche attack. So for this one, I'm going to drop my point down and I'm going to take the 6 opposition coming in. So just to take a look at those two, the first one, the circle 6 disengage, my arm extends, I make a small disengage with the point, and I'm moving my wrist over to protect the inside of my body. Now with the 4 disengage, okay, I'm again dropping the point down, but this time I'm going to lift my wrist and drop the point, covering the 6 opposition as I go in. All right, everybody, that does it for this video. I hope you found this information helpful, and I hope it helps you improve your fencing game. If you are enjoying these videos, guys, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment below. If you are really liking these videos and you want to help me produce more awesome fencing content for you, there are a few different ways that you can do that. Check out all the different ways that you can support this channel below in the description. I really want to give a big shout out to all of my Patreon supporters out there. You guys are the engine that drives this channel, and I couldn't do it without you, so thank you so much for all your support. Until next time, guys, have fun, work hard, and practice.